Hey everybody, welcome to the Baskipedia Podcast. I'm your host, Marc Hart from Patriot High School in Riverside and System Basketball. Today we have Coach Beck Flanagan of Hope International University. How are you doing today, Coach?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on.
So crazy times in the world with COVID, and what have you been doing with your basketball program to try to stay in touch? Have you been really limited? Are you guys free and open there, or what's it like?
Yeah, so we've been pretty much everything's been virtual for us since March. We, the president gave everyone an extended spring break. We thought we'd all come back. Obviously, that didn't happen, and we finished the semester with remote learning. And most recently, they decided to continue that for the fall semester until circumstances are different, in which case we'll hopefully be able to bring people back sooner than later. But as of right now, everything's virtual distant learning. We do have a small handful, like maybe just a few players that are actually still able to stay on campus, but they're still doing remote learning. So we haven't been able to do anything in person, but we've been trying to be creative as far as our time with Zoom. We do a lot of team Zoom meetings. We've done them basically throughout the whole spring, summer, and now moving into the fall, and just trying to keep it fresh and engaging. We haven't done as much on the physical side. I mean, we kind of trust them to, get their workouts in. We have everyone do some like running, some miles, some push-ups, planks, stuff like that. But for most of our players, they don't have access to a weight room. So they're kind of on their own with regards to that for the meantime. But what we've been trying to do is we watch some film together. So we'll talk basketball, X's and O's. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it'll be film from our teams of like last season and the season before. We'll look at opponents' game film. We'll look at WNBA clips. But then we try to do a lot of stuff too that's not necessarily basketball related. Like we've talked about current events, what's going on in the world, getting to know each other better, connecting our returning players with our incoming new players. We've done stuff like having to talk about personal finances and what credit scores are, how to improve them. The stuff that, maybe isn't necessarily taught in high school or college, but very valuable, good information to have. And then we have a lot of guest speakers when we can. We try to bring in some people that will talk to our team. And those have been on a variety of different subjects. Most of our guest speakers have been basketball related, but not all. So we some of it's career development, some of it's basketball. We were fortunate to have a WNBA player be one of our guest speakers, which was pretty cool. She's a friend of one of our assistant coaches. And actually recently I found out a website called Brightful. They have online games that you can you go to their website and you can copy the link and then share it in the chat. And so there's kind of some fun games. So we tried a couple of those with our team just to keep it fresh, so we're not always doing the same thing, but still trying to check in and, meet with them when we can. And, now they just started school. So last week was the beginning of the fall semester for us. So I think this week we're going to start doing a virtual study hall. So We'll see how that goes. We'll have we'll use the breakout rooms, and it'll mostly be about checking in, seeing what assignments they have coming up, how they're doing with their, if they need any help in anything. They have tutors through Hope as well. So finding out who needs a tutor and how can we set that up. Again, it's all virtual right now, but we're making the most of it.
So you started off as a high school coach, and you've now been in college coaching for quite a while. How did that come about? Is it something that was a goal, or did they seek you out, or did it just happen? How did the college coaching aspect come?
Yeah, I'd say if I'll even rewind a little further back, how I became a coach originally, I was in high school myself. I think I was a junior in high school, and I was taking my younger brother to his basketball tryouts for his local rec league, and his coach from the year before approached me. He said, "Hey, we need some more coaches. What do you think about helping out?" And so of course it was volunteer. I was like, yeah, I'll be happy to. And I did that season, really enjoyed it, did it again the next year. The second year, our little rec league, actually rec team ended up winning the championship. And I guess I was kind of hooked on it and wanted to kind of go up the ranks. But at the time I actually wanted to be just a youth coach, coaching year round. And I actually went over to ARC, Youth Boys AAU Club, run by Rich Goldberg. And, they've had a lot of former NBA players that have gone through that program, and just wanted to coach for them. And they were like, you know what, you actually have to have high school or college coaching experience. So I went back to my high school where I had graduated from and asked them if I could, be an assistant coach, and they knew me well. They were happy to have me. And so at the end of that year, I actually went back to ARC to say, okay, I've got a season of experience. I'd like an interview. And they're like, okay, great. And right, just the way things kind of work together. My high school where I'd graduated from contacted me to say, we need a head coach. What do you think about taking over the program and being the head varsity coach? So basically a year out of high school, I think I turned 20 years old, and I was the head varsity coach for my high school. I became a coach for ARC with their youth program. So I was doing both simultaneously, and I was loving it. It was a great experience for me. I mean, I was very young at the time, obviously. And I remember several of the players that were, now juniors and seniors, I had actually played with when I was a senior and they were like freshmen or sophomores. So I kind of had to draw that line to say, look, I'm your coach here. I'm not your friend. Yeah. But my younger brother played for me. I was the assistant coach for him his freshman year of high school. And then I got to be the head coach his sophomore, junior, and senior year, which was really a great experience. And I liked it a lot. And I enjoyed coaching at the high school level. And, when I moved to San Diego, I ended up getting another high school varsity job coaching girls basketball in San Diego. And I'll tell you, I did enjoy it, but I think I had higher aspirations. I wanted to be a college coach because I felt that the players are more committed, top to bottom. Now, don't get me wrong. I had some players on my high school teams that were very committed and dedicated, were, the kids that you really love to coach day in and day out. But I also had some players, and I'm sure you found this as well, some of them that just didn't necessarily want to put in the time and the effort that it took. They weren't as committed. Some of them, maybe thought, hey, it's cool to be on the team, or my friend's on the team, so I'll be on it, or something to do. And I won't get into all this, but I'm sure all the parents, as the years went, it just got to be, I guess for me, the last straw where I was like, I'm definitely know that I'm done with coaching high school. I'll give you this one short story. We had a league game, and I had 5 parents, 4 of which had their own video recorders with them, that didn't come to watch their kids play. 5 parents went to go watch rival teams in our league that were playing each other, to video record and create their own scouting reports, of which none of this was asked for. I mean, I'm just thinking, come watch your kids, come support your team. But they felt like, oh, well, this game's going to be an easy win for us, because we had won that game we had beat the same team the first time in league by a comfortable margin. So they felt like, oh, we're just going to win, so we're going to go watch this other game. And I just felt like, this is too much. Like, you guys need to just support your kid, be a fan, be a good parent. But some of them, unfortunately, I think had nothing better to do. And
that's a good one. Wow, I haven't heard a story like that. That's pretty good. Heard some other, as you know, there's lots of crazy parent stories. So, so who are some of the coaches that have helped mold your philosophy?
Yeah, I think a great coach that really helped me a lot as a young coach. So, as I said, right after high school, I was the head coach, and I actually took some time off before I went to college, just to kind of focus on coaching at first. Then when I started taking classes, I took them at a local community college. And I ended up being in a PE class. It was sports officiating, actually, with Virgil Watson, the men's coach at LA Valley College. And a lot of times it was kind of an early in the morning class, and a lot of times, we might be the only ones there for whatever reason.
Oh.
And what was great about it is he just would sit down with me and he said, what do you want to talk about? What should we, and of course he had given all the resources for the class, but for me, I was very fortunate that he was able to just sit down and talk basketball. And he had the dry erase board and he said, okay, let's talk about triangle offense. Okay. Let me show you this out of bounds play. And, it was just such a great experience being able to like pick his brain and learn from him. And, he was actually the one, and I know we're on your Facebook group together about Dribble Drive Motion. And, he was the one that introduced me to Vance Wahlberg and was explaining and teaching me about the Dribble Drive Motion back then when Vance had just gotten the job at Pepperdine. And so Virgil Watson actually brought me to some practices and some games at Pepperdine. And so not only was I learning and watching them, but he's sitting next to me, and we had, I would make sure to always bring a notepad, and he'd, if there was time out of a game, he'd just start drawing stuff up for me, or at practice, he'd be kind enough to explain stuff and draw it further. So I really learned a lot from him. And then, I was really intrigued with the style that Wahlberg has done. And obviously it's been interesting to follow his career and see him move up to the NBA and then come back full circle. And, I've been able, fortunately, I've gone to Clovis to watch some, I've spent a few days up there multiple times just going to watch practices. He's been really giving of his time and happy to have me and anyone come watch. So I learned a lot from them, but, over the years, there's just been a lot of different coaches that have also shaped my career. Another one that's been really big is Beth Burns. She was the head women's coach at San Diego State. When I moved to San Diego, I went to San Diego State. I tried to help the men's team at the time, and they didn't need my help, unfortunately. And they were really good at the time. And I got to meet Coach Steve Fisher, and at the time Kawhi Leonard was on the team, and they were really, really good. But as luck would have it, I wandered into an office for women's basketball, and they seized the opportunity to recruit me to be a women's practice player for the women's team. And so I ended up going every day to practice and being part of that with the women's team at San Diego State. And they had a future WNBA player on the team and multiple players that went on to play professionally overseas. And so that's kind of where I realized at that time, wow, women's basketball is a lot better than I thought it was. Prior to that, my experiences had, been limited with women's basketball, and I didn't know as much, and I didn't think it was, worth the time. But, I would come back from those practices with bruises on my arms and, getting banged up by their post players. And I was like, wow, they're physical. They play fast. They're very fundamentally sound. It's really exciting and fun to watch them play. And I just learned so much from Coach Beth Burns and her staff. I mean, she had at the time, Coach Renee Jimenez, who's at Cal State San Marcos, was an assistant coach. Heidi Vanderveer, who's the UC San Diego coach, and then Coach Y, who was coaching at USC where she played, but she's now, I think, at UC Irvine. So just a great staff that I was able to learn from all of them, and that helped shape my career as well, especially getting into women's basketball, and was really helpful. And then I guess last, I got to mention Herb Livesey, mentor of mine that I know a lot of people on your Zoom meetings and different clinics that you've had and other people. A lot of people talk about Herb Livesey and what a great mentor he is, and how much he's shared with myself and so many other coaches. But I was able to go to Snow Valley as a player when I was in high school, and then I went back there as a coach and got to coach when he was there in Santa Barbara. So he's been a great mentor of mine over the years.
Okay, if you could pick one coach to spend some time with, present or past, to learn from, who would you choose?
That is a great question. I think I would have to say Phil Jackson. I just think, especially recently with the documentary on The Last Dance, I've, been able to read a couple of his books. I just love that not only has he been such an amazing and successful coach, but just reading and learning more about his different philosophies and how he approaches coaching and the game and life in general. I just think he'd be a really fascinating and interesting person. I think he's a master as far as managing different personalities and helping players find the right role to be successful in. And he's clearly had tremendous success, not just as a coach, but even as a player. And I think he'd be someone I would just love to learn from and grow in my, I have so many coaches that I would love to spend time with, but I think that would be a really cool experience.
If I had to pick one, and just thought about it today when I was writing down some questions for you, Chuck Daly.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that would be great.
Coaching the bad boys and devising the stuff for Jordan, and then being the coach of the dream team. So I'm assuming that he would have some great stories, great stuff to talk about. That's who came to my mind, and never really was a Detroit fan, being a Laker fan. So, but Chuck Daly interests me.
Yeah. Have you seen the 30 for 30 on the Bad Boys?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, that's so great. I love that.
Let's talk a little bit about your program, and you're in the NAIA level, and you coach in the GSAC, which people don't know about the GSAC. It's one of the tougher conferences in all of NAIA. You have Westmont, you have Masters. Those are usually two of the top in the country, not just GSAC. What is it like competing in that conference?
Yeah, I think the GSAC, in my opinion, is the toughest, at least in basketball. I think it's the most dominant, toughest conference in the country. I know for women's basketball last year, we had 6 teams from our conference make it to the national tournament, which was more than any other conference in the country. And we regularly have 3 teams that are regularly in the top 10 in the country. You mentioned Westmont and Masters, but Vanguard is another one that's often in the top 10. And then we have multiple other teams that are often in the top 25. So it's really a challenge. I mean, I think it's great to coach in the GSAC because you're going up against not just really great players, but really great coaches. And, these schools, especially the ones that are, the top ones year in and year out, like Russ at Vanguard and Kristen at Westmont, and then Dan at Masters, all of them have been in their position for over a decade. In Russ's case, a couple of decades. So you're talking about some highly experienced, excellent coaches. Westmont and Vanguard have both won national championships, so they know what it takes to compete at the highest level, and they do so on a regular basis. So I think it really challenges our whole team and our staff preparing for those teams, competing against them. And so I just think it makes us better. It makes our players better. And it's never easy, that's for sure. It's always a grind. It's always tough, but I think it just makes us better. And I've learned a lot from coaching against these teams as well as everywhere else. So for those that don't know, the GSAC, and I say the same thing about men's basketball, it's very competitive, and there are so many players that can play at the Division I level, and oftentimes a lot of them that have played Division I. The talent level is really, really high, and the coaching is excellent. So it's just great basketball and fun to be part of.
Growing up in Laverne, I would see my fair share of when Azusa Pacific was in the GSAC of APU versus Biola. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We used to watch it in the small APU facility, and then they went to the Felix Event Center, and no other game in that small APU gym versus Biola. You had to be there I don't know how early to get a seat. And then they got the Felix Event Center, and APU's now moved on to D2, and I think is Biola in D2 as well.
Yeah, the funny thing is the best Division II teams in Southern California are all former GSAC teams. Azusa Pacific, Biola, you've got Concordia, Point Loma Nazarene, Cal Baptist.
You've got Cal Baptist, it's a D1 school now. So
yeah.
So GSAC's no joke. Coach, you talk about in your program, on your bio and everything, about family. How important is that, and how do you define that at Biola? I mean, how do you try to make that family atmosphere?
Yeah, I think it's harder now for sure with the Zoom meetings, but it's definitely been something of real importance to not only myself but our whole coaching staff, our team, since day one, and we try to continue it. When everyone is here, like my wife loves to cook and have the team over. We'll have team dinners. We'll have Christmas parties together, and for Halloween we're doing a pumpkin carving at our house. So we live in Fullerton, really close to Hope. So we try to have that atmosphere and that environment where everyone feels really connected and close, which, like I said, is harder now in a virtual world, but I think it just comes down to caring about each other and, communicating. And we do a lot where we try to get to know everyone on a personal level, not just as basketball players. And I think that's been an important part of our success, and we try to celebrate our accomplishments together. But I just think when and I know a lot of people talk about family, but we really stand behind it, and we really want to be there for our players. Not just through the good times, but for the bad times too. I had a player call me earlier today, as a matter of fact, and she just called to talk, to say, "Look, Coach, I have some good news and bad news." And excuse me. I said, "Well, why don't you give me the bad news first?" And she went on to tell me about a very close family friend that had pancreatic cancer and just passed away today. Which they were expecting, but still is, hard to hear. And, but she felt comfortable sharing that. We were talking about it and try to support her and her family. And, and at the same time, she gave me the good news to say that she was honored, and she was nominated and honored by several of her professors from last school year for her outstanding achievement in the classroom and getting good grades over a variety of different class subjects that she took. So, it's stuff like that where I think that we emphasize that it's the person first and the basketball player second. And I think that makes players and our coaching staff just more connected, and we really feel like we're more than just a team, but we really have that family atmosphere. And, the same goes for our graduating players, that we stay connected with them, and we want to help them in any way we can. And, right now, especially our graduated seniors, trying to find a career during COVID, it's no easy task. So we're trying to do what we can to help them, as well as our current players, our incoming freshmen, the recruits that we talk to. So I guess it just comes down to that personal touch and caring about each other more than anything.
On the recruiting side of it, at NAIA, you probably there's a balance between NCAA and NAIA. You have some advantages, they have some advantages. For people that don't understand NAIA, do you have a bucket of money, or do you have X number of scholarships you can give out? Or is that per school based?
Yeah.
Does each school do it differently in the NAIA? Is there no real rule? How does it work?
Yeah, so the NAIA has, and I guess NAIA and Division II for NCAA are similar in this regard, that the overall governing body makes the rule and as far as how many scholarships are allowed. So up until this year of 2020, NAIA for men's and women's basketball has had 2 divisions, 1 and 2, and Division I has had 11 scholarships, 11 full scholarships. Division II has had 6 full scholarships. This year they've combined divisions 1 and 2. And so the scholarships, they've kind of met in the middle where we've lost a little. Division 2 has gained some. So, but even having said that, it depends also on the university. It's just like some of my coaching friends that coach Division 2, where the NCAA rule might be you get 10 scholarships. They're telling me, well, my university is saying I have 4 scholarships or 6 scholarships, depending on the case. So, for some time, the GSAC as a conference had a rule where it was 11 full tuition scholarships, but not covering room and board. That got changed recently. So now we're allowed to give the NAIA maximum as a conference. However, that just, again, depends on each university. And, I've been in both situations. I've coached at places where we give the full amount, and given 10 kids on our team have gotten full rides. And we've been able to compete against Division 1 schools for the same athletes. Whereas I've also been where it's more like you were mentioning, a pool of money, and we have to be really creative and, give as much as we can to each player and their family, but working with the allotment that we have. So, in that regard, it just depends school by school. And I think, even within conferences, there's some schools that have more to give, and it kind of helps them have a greater advantage over the lesser teams in the conference, where they might be restricted by their university and what they're actually able or allowed to give. So to that end, I think it makes even more challenging in some instances competing against the top teams in the conference. But we're not ones to complain. We're gonna do the most with what we have. And one other thing I just want to say about the NAIA versus the NCAA that a lot of people ask and wonder what's the difference. And I like to say the NCAA has done a better job, in my opinion, of branding themselves. So I think the NCAA is more of like a household family name that people recognize and they know what that means. Whereas the NAIA, it just, like you said, it's not as well known. And I think part of that is branding. I think, they've both been around. I think actually the NAIA has been around 1 year longer than the NCAA. But over the years, especially with NCAA Division I, in the Power 5 conferences, they've been able to get a lot more notoriety, a lot more money, with stuff like the NCAA tournament, college football. So they've become a much larger organization, and the NAIA is just a smaller organization, but it's still a governing body that helps facilitate the rules. And like I was saying earlier, the competition level is still really, really good. And for those that ask me, how I would compare it, I usually like to say that NAIA basketball, again, in my opinion, is about similar to NCAA Division II. Mm-hmm. That's how I would say. And of course, you're going to have some teams that are better, some teams that are worse, but right. On the whole, we have a similar amount of scholarship money to work with, so we often get somewhat similar level of player and talent level.
One of the things that I really like about the NAIA is, if they still do it, I don't know, with them combining the two divisions, is I think it's when you get down to 16 teams where everybody plays in the same site. Is that still the case?
Yeah, that is still the case. Actually, what it has been that's been even more interesting, and now they changed it this year with moving them. Now they're doing small sites, and the final 16 will go to the same site. But the interesting thing is they've actually had 32 teams go to the same site in previous years, with each 32 for Division I, 32 for Division II. And so
usually in Kansas?
Yeah, men's basketball, Kansas. The women's basketball has been in some different places. They haven't had as long of a contract, I guess, with the host cities. But when I coached at Loyola University, I went to one in Frankfort, Kentucky. And then after that, it was in Billings, Montana for 3 years. And I think the next one's going to be in Sioux City, Iowa, moving forward for the next few years. But yeah, once you make it to that final group, it's really a cool experience to be when everyone's in the same site and you're able to watch the games live in real time. And, it's a great experience, especially for the student athletes.
So when you're out recruiting, are you I play this style of basketball and I recruit towards it, or do you just recruit and then figure out what you're going to run? Because I know you like to run dribble drive if you can. Is that kind of your set philosophy? What are you doing?
Yeah, so more or less kind of a combination of both of those. We do like dribble drive concepts, but I will also tell you especially in recent years, we've run a good amount of sets and quick hitters to get maybe ISOs for certain players we want to get the ball to, or various actions. Especially with the younger players, I feel like the sets have kind of helped us get a little bit more organized. And as we get more comfortable, our basketball IQ increases, we can kind of be able to play and read off of each other a little more. But I would say from a recruiting philosophy, we really try to, and we tell everybody our style and our system, we want to play fast. We want to play aggressive. We press, we run, we fast break. Last year, we were more system-like than this previous season. So 2 seasons ago, we were almost every game 5 in, 5 out. Throw a brand new 5 fresh legs on the court. This last season, we did that some of the time, but not as much, not always. But we want to play fast. We want to play aggressive. However, we also want to find the best available players we can. And so in that regard, we're gonna work with who we have to try to put them in the best position we possibly can. My first year at Hope, we had an international player from France who, for most of the year, was leading the country in scoring and rebounding. She was, even as a freshman, she was national player of the week. She was all conference, and she was 6'3" post player that was really strong, had really, nice moves around the basket. And so, as you can imagine, we ran a lot of stuff to get the ball inside, a lot more, of a low post game, feed her the ball. And so so we do stuff like that to try to help her and help our team. But this last year we were smaller, and so we tended to run a more guard dominated. I think we had some injuries at the post position, so we were a lot smaller. Sometimes we'd be playing 5 out. And so we might do more sets, like I said, more quick hitters to get certain people the ball, maybe coming off of a stagger or with space or ball screen. So we try to do a lot of different things, but in essence, we want to play fast and aggressive, but we also want to do what makes sense for the personnel we have.
So with COVID, I know you've been coming on quite a bit of Zoom calls with me and elsewhere. Who you been studying? Who you been looking? Are you just looking for things to justify what you're doing? Or are you looking for new ideas? What are you trying to do?
Gosh, I'm always trying to study what people are doing and looking for good ideas. And, that's been the really bright side, I guess, if you will, of COVID, the amount of Zoom clinics and sessions that have been on, being able to learn from coaches all over the world at every level. And so there's so many great coaches out there, and they have different systems, they have different sets, they have different philosophies. And, it's one of these things that's so fascinating because everybody's got something that works for them. And I think us as coaches learning, the more you watch these different coaches and you go, oh yeah, that makes sense. That sounds great. I'm taking all kinds of notes, trying to figure out, okay, this makes sense for our team, or, maybe I like this, but it doesn't work as well for who we have. I think the biggest thing is trying to filter that down to what's going to work for our team. I think there's this good likelihood that this season, when and hopefully if the season does happen, I know it's been moved back for a lot of levels. We're still kind of waiting to find out when our season will be, waiting on the NEI and our conference. Like it may be moved to the second semester, like a lot of levels have done for maybe a January start, but again, we don't know yet. But I just have this feeling that with so many great ideas and so many people to learn from, that so many coaches might be trying to overcoach their teams and trying to do too much. And, the other question that I just don't know yet is how much time will we even have with our team to practice? I mean, some coaches I've talked to have said, we might only have a couple weeks in January where we have our team together and, cleared to actually practice in full contact before we start playing games. And those games might be conference games. So, it's like, if you only have a couple weeks, then we're going to have to be very selective about what we do.
I just got my schedule. I mean, as you know, here in California, we got moved to March. So
Right.
March 12th is our first thing. So we've been scrambling to do our schedule. They're allowing us, if we choose, to play our full 28 games, but in 9 less calendar days than what we would normally do it in.
Mm-hmm.
So I started looking at my schedule. First week, 4 games.
Yeah, wow.
In 6 days, we'll say. The next week, I think it's 4 games in 6 days.
Wow.
And then the third week, 5 games.
Oh, man.
So me probably running the system might not be a bad thing, because when am I going to be practicing? It's get out, run, shoot the ball, trap it, go crazy, play lots of playing. What is that? 13 basketball games, and you don't count Sundays. So 14 games in 18 days.
Wow.
That's that's a lot. So
that's a ton. What about your practice? When do you know yet when you'll be able to practice?
When we'll be able to even start practices. The rumor is being told to us that we won't be allowed to work out with our team until physical school starts. And the way things seem, and don't like to be dumb German with stuff, but right now it just doesn't seem like, I don't know what you think is, I don't think physical school seems to be in the card until 2021.
Mm-hmm.
I think they'll want to play like out a semester, like have the kids go till Christmas break, distance learning, have the Christmas break, New Year comes, and then January you start up physical school. I think it's going to have a school part will not be put back in until like there's a quarter break, like hard or something. They're not going to just say, hey, you're off the watch list. Let's come back. It's going to be, okay, we've done 6 weeks of school of distance learning. That's our grading period. Now we come back, something like that. That's my opinion. I don't think we'll know, unfortunately, until after the election, what's going to go on. I think that has something to do with it a little bit. It's real. COVID, people are dying and stuff. I know my team wants to go back. I know my kids want to go back. It was very difficult for us. You're aware of it because you asked me a little while ago before we got started here. We were the only one of the high schools that got to actually have some workouts. I got 2 in, and then that Monday following, we got the email saying we couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
My kids, with the rules of we couldn't pass, we couldn't play 5-on-5, they didn't care. They were just happy to be in a gym, shooting a basketball, running around, having some socialization with some people, instead of Zoom calls. I've been shocked too, Coach, with how many people have been on Zoom calls and the level of respect of coaches, of D1 coaches listening to high school coaches. I mean, I did one on the press, and all of a sudden the guy unmutes himself and asks a question. And I'm like going, you're the coach from University of Portland. Why are you asking me a question? But that's just, I think what this has all done is basketball coaches used to have a thing of, we were so secretive. We didn't want people to know what we're doing. And now everybody's just sharing so much. I mean, I know you share a lot, I share a lot. We've had various coaches from high school to junior high to D1 speak, and just the respect that people are giving people that are speaking and presenting has just been awesome during this time. And I hope it kind of continues when we're
Yeah.
I don't know if we'll ever be back to normal. The world's going to be, I think masks and stuff are going to be part of our lives during the flu seasons and stuff like that, and protocols of stuff. I think it's just going to be a part of our everyday lives.
Right.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
I
will say the thing that strikes me though, like, and you had such a great guest early on in the coach from Alaska Anchorage.
Ryan McCarthy.
Ryan McCarthy. Yeah. He, sharing his amoeba defense and,
I'm blown away how much info he gave away.
Yeah. Phenomenal presentation. He shared so much and answered every question and went on, a really long and thorough instructional. I mean, it was fantastic. It was wonderful. But I think even though we hear all that and he shares it all, a lot of this stuff comes down to, can you execute? Can you go against it? Even knowing what they want to do, can you still be effective? And, can you execute? So.
And you got the system coaches where they're like, they don't care. We're gonna shoot a three and we're gonna trap. Well, I mean, what?
Right.
What
See if you can stop us, right?
This is us. This is what we're doing. So I don't know. I'm gonna play. I had Mike Neighbors on, and I like to do this occasionally. Got us going. Top 3 Zoom clinics that you've probably, if you could think of, that you've listened to, either on my stuff or anybody's. Obviously, Ryan McCarthy was probably one of them for you. Anybody else stick out in your brain?
Mike Neighbors, he's great. I've been on multiple Zooms with him, and he's always great. He teaches so much. Ryan McCarthy was awesome. I know, Doc Shepler, I think he's another one that shares so much. And, he actually was a guest speaker with our team and talked to our team about shooting, which was awesome. I really loved having him on there. And
he's coming on the podcast next week. So,
great.
Listen to Doc.
Doc's wonderful. I've been able to go watch some of his practices and spend time with him. He's phenomenal.
There's a reason why he was, I think, awarded Silver Waves, the top 100 influential in women's college basketball, and he doesn't even coach college. So, but he's sending lots of girls to college. So he's just unbelievable what he does. And I agree with that one. He was one of my top. McCarthy was one of my top, and then the guy that I'm going to be doing something with him, partnering with him. But every time I hear Kurt Gelsdorf,
love Kurt. KG, his 60-second stuff is always great. I was really excited to see him. He was going to be presenting at the Final Four it was supposed to be in New Orleans, which is where I lived for 5 years, where I met my wife. Even though we're both from California, we met in New Orleans. And anyway, I was so excited about going out there. And then, I was looking forward to Kurt's presentation, and obviously that all got canceled. But we were able to connect, and I've been on numerous Zooms with him. So I think that's really cool that he's working, that you guys are partnering together. He's such a great resource. He shares so much.
Literally met him in March. Reached out to him. He did a private Zoom with me. Then he started doing some more public Zooms as they got more popular. And he's just a great, like you said, mentors and talking to people that know more than you know, that you can bounce ideas off of. And I get more from him than he gets from me, but he still sits there and listens to ideas and talks. So what's the forecast look like? I mean, God willing that we get to play. Are you excited about your incoming class and your potential?
Very excited. Yeah. So we, and I will tell you something that, I obviously had no idea any of this was coming. If I had a crystal ball, I'd, tell you everything. But, as it turned out, our recruiting philosophy, starting back a year or so ago, when I first got the job, I was hired late. As it is for a lot of programs, you get the job, it's summertime, you find out, oh, you got 5 healthy players. You better bring in some new players right away. And so my first year, we ended up bringing in a lot of transfers from community colleges. And that I think is a good, temporary fix to kind of help turn a program around. But, we were kind of thinking more long-term, wanting to bring in more incoming freshmen that we'd have for 4 years to really be able to build and develop the program the way we wanted it to be. And, sometimes you find with community college transfers, some of them are great, but some of them, come in, they've played for so many coaches, they've, feel like they maybe know they know everything already. So sometimes you have that push and pull dynamic where we just felt like, if we can start players in fresh right out of high school and have them for 4 years, like we just feel that'll be great to our success long term. And so that combined with another thing that came up last year around this time, is actually back in March. I was asked by our administration to start a second team. So that's something that, especially with small colleges and universities, we're seeing more and more of. I think way back in the day, schools like UCLA and North Carolina, they used to have the freshman team as well as their varsity team. Mm-hmm. And that over the years kind of went away. And I feel like that's making a comeback. And especially with smaller schools like ours that maybe are to some extent enrollment driven with their athletic programs. So we were able to start a development team last season. And, on the bright side, they said, okay, start a development team and you have extra scholarship money to work with. So we thought, okay, great. We have more opportunities to offer to student athletes that want to play college basketball that maybe, wouldn't have had the opportunity elsewhere, or maybe they would have gone to a community college, but we can offer them scholarship money and a great environment for the next 4 years. And so, when I tell my coaching friends this, they say it's crazy, but last year, because of starting the new program and just with our team, we were graduating a lot of seniors, we ended up signing 18 freshmen. 18 freshmen as our 2019 class. And so, again, that was like a brand new team for our development team, plus a whole lot of them that played on our main team as well. So on the bright side, we've got a ton of returning players. I think our main team has 11 returning players. No, 12. I think it's 12, as a matter of fact. We had injury that she's back from surgery. So, for us, I'm really excited because we signed 3 players that we wanted, and we were fortunate that we had been recruiting them early enough on, and they actually got to come to campus in early March. Well, one had signed back in like November. So the other 2 that we really wanted that were high on our list got to come and visit and practice with our team and get to meet everyone, and, really loved our program, our team, our university. And, so we were able to sign them before everything shut down, and which was really fortunate for us because a lot of years during the spring and even into early summer, a lot of the smaller programs are still signing players, those players that maybe didn't, somehow or other got unnoticed. They're under the radar, but they still, have the skill level, the talent to play at the next level. But we had signed so many from before that a lot of them are returning. So what I'm excited about is that we have all these returners that are young, but now have at least a year under their belt of playing experience in the GSAC. And so we still have a young team, but I feel like they have a lot more experience. And of the incoming players we have, we feel like the 3 that are new signees, they're going to add a lot to the group that we have coming back as well. So hopefully we're playing soon because we like our team a lot. We feel like we were competitive last year with such a young team. I think we ended the season with we were starting 3 freshmen, a sophomore, and a senior. So
Yep.
to know that we have, returning starters coming back for their sophomore year, plus, the new people added, we feel like we have a lot of talent to work with. It's just a matter of when can we get on the court together, and, hopefully we can play games and have a full season.
Are you the only school in the GSAC that has that?
That has all the returning players?
The developmental team.
Actually, both teams, let's see, I know Arizona Christian has a development team. Vanguard has one for their men's team. I believe William Jessup is in the process of starting a development team. I can't remember if Life Pacific was starting one or not. Ottawa in Arizona, I think they're also looking to start one. So it's definitely growing in popularity. But I think we were one of the early teams to get started with that. And thankfully for us now, it's paying off that we have a lot of players in our program. So numbers wise, we're in good shape.
You'll have a roster like the size of Coach Pruitt at Laverne.
Right. And he has a second team. Exactly. He's got a development team, and
he just started it either last year or before. He's only had it for a couple of years, and they never had one. So, I mean, that's a quote unquote system type thing where you're in. Why a lot of teams go to it in college, because it's enrollment driven. So.
Yeah, and Coach Pruitt had a lot of success too, I believe, at Antelope Valley, building that program. They have a development team and a main team, I think, because of Coach Pruitt and what he did with the system there and all the success they've had. So, yeah, he's getting them going at Laverne too. I'm excited to see, the program continue to improve.
So with our rules, how does it help you with recruiting? Doesn't do anything for your recruiting now that we won't be playing in March and your season's basically over? Does it make more work for you? Or because how much of a factor do you think it's going to have? Or are a lot of these kids already going to be signed prior to them even playing high school basketball for 2021s?
Yeah, I think that's such a difficult thing to predict, because I do think with COVID and everything going on, there's a lot of fear maybe in both student athletes, like what if they don't have an opportunity? And so I think they're more likely to sign and take the first opportunity that comes their way. I don't think they're necessarily going to hold out as long as they might otherwise. And
that's what I think.
So in a lot of years, you have players that are maybe recruited early on, but they think they're better than they are. At any level, even if they're a Division I athlete, they might think, well, I'm a Power 5 player. I should be in the Pac-12, and you're in the Big West, so I'm going to wait and see what other offers come.
Yeah, their big boy offer. Yeah.
Yeah. So I feel that that's something that every college coach at every level, and unless you're like UCLA or USC, Kentucky, Duke, unless you're one of those blue blood programs that just gets the cream of the crop, I think almost everyone deals with to some extent those players that are maybe trying to see if they can do bigger or better. But with COVID, I think players might not be the attitude anymore. They might think, I have an offer, I have an opportunity, I'm going to jump at it. And I think on the other side, coaches might be thinking the same thing and worried, like you're saying, what if everyone's gone? What if everyone's signed? And, what if we don't, have enough opportunity to see everybody, and we just want to make sure we're not left with nobody. And so I could see it going the other direction too, where programs are offering players based on, highlight reels or just game film of maybe one of their top games without actually having seen that player and, met them in person. So
yeah, I'm hearing 22s are already being offered by some schools.
Yeah. And, for our program, our philosophy has always been, we want to really get to know the player, on a personal level, and watching them play in person, to really see how are they as a teammate? How do they react to coaching? How do they, what do they like on the bench? What do they like with their parents before and after the game? How do they treat people? How do they, and all these things that you just really can't see on film. And, so it's going to be really interesting. And I do feel like, especially with the transfer portal becoming a thing, recently, I just feel like the transfer portal plus COVID, I think we're going to see like just record amounts of transfers in the years to come. I think people are committing early without having, some people are committing without ever stepping foot on campus, without ever, meeting the team or meeting the coaches. Maybe they're able to have a call or a Zoom, but those are kind of like, I would say as an analogy, like a first date, or a job interview. You're going to get the best version, but you're not going to really have enough time to spend with each other to really find out more about each other and what each person values and what their morals are. And so, I just think that people are going to be surprised as far as this isn't the player I recruited, or the players are going to go, this isn't what I expected this program to be. And
versa, or both.
So,
what advice, if any, coach, would you give to any young coach that may be listening to this later about how they could break into college coaching? What advice would you give to them?
My thing is probably get in any way you can. If that's something that's a goal of yours, be willing to volunteer. Don't try any opportunity you possibly can. I'll tell you, for me, I wanted to be a college coach. That was something I had decided was a goal of mine, even while I was a high school and club coach. And, any opportunity that comes along, I'll tell you, I was coaching in San Diego at San Pasqual High School. And, I was going to watch practices at Point Loma Nazarene. And that's something I've always tried to do. And I recommend for any coach, when practices are happening, go to as many as you can. Go watch other coaches. Like I told you before, I would go to Doc Shepler's practice and watch. I went to Vance Wahlberg's practice. I would go to, men's, women's. I'd go to Loyola Marymount, UC San Diego, USD. I mean, anywhere within driving distance. And even if I had to get in a plane, if it was, worth it to, if there's a way to make it work and it was within my means, you can always learn a lot and you build relationships in person. And so going to watch practices, I think is huge, but being ready and willing to volunteer. I mean, I'll tell you how. So I was at Point Loma Nazarene watching their practices, and Bill Westfall was the coach, whose brother Paul Westfall was an NBA coach for a number of years. And, Bill Westfall, he in his own right is a, legendary coach. He's won over 500 games. And he was a great mentor, or he became a great mentor, but I came to watch them practice. And, as you find, and you mentioned this earlier in this podcast, that the greats want to learn from anybody. These people that are so highly successful. I mean, so, I've recognized, and that's happened to me firsthand, where I've been with someone who I really look up to and admire, and I'm there to learn from them, and they start asking me questions. And so I'm sitting in the stands with Coach Westfall, and he starts asking me, and, I start telling him about dribble drive stuff that I've been, I was successful implementing it with our team at San Pasqual, and how I learned from Vance Wahlberg and Virgil Watson. And, he was really interested in it and intrigued. And Coach Westfall, even though he'd been coaching, so many years, and he was kind of in the later part of his career, he still wanted to learn, and he was still willing to try new things. And so he was liking what we were talking about, and, asked me if I would come back. And, at the time, Point Loma Nazarene was in the GSAC, and with the NAIA rules being more flexible, I would say that's one big difference. NCAA has, like 1,000-page rule book, and there's just so many rules to follow that it can make things difficult. But, Coach Westfall asked me if I would come to a practice and, work with his team and show him some dribble drive stuff. And, I was honored at that. He wanted me as a high school coach to come and work with his players. And, I started looking at their game schedule. And at the time, my high school schedule was like Wednesday, Friday, and they played Thursday, Saturday at the time. And, after coming back and we were sharing DVDs, I brought him some of my coaching DVDs, and he let me take some of his home. And, I said to him, look, what do you think about me volunteering? You you guys play on different days. Obviously, like I'm a high school coach where if there's a conflict, that's got to be my priority because I'm the head coach, but I don't foresee that many conflicts. I'm happy to be at both. I'll come to all your practices. I'll go to all mine anytime I was just loving it. And he said, yeah, sure. He was in favor of it, and I got to be a volunteer assistant coach. And I mean, at the time I was living in Carlsbad, and then I was working in Escondido, and Point Loma Nazarene is in Point Loma in like South San Diego. So we're talking about a lot of miles I was putting on my car, but it was such a great opportunity, and he was willing to have me as a coach on his staff. And that's where I became friends with Alan Nakamura, who's the head coach of Biola. And, he ended up giving a really good recommendation for me when I was interviewing at Hope. And so that was kind of for me how I got into college coaching, was through that. And, to say it again, another person I'll tell you, short story, Muffet McGraw, when I was living in New Orleans and I was coaching at Loyola University, they had a closed practice at Tulane University across the street from us when they were there for the Final Four. They're getting ready to play UConn in the Final Four. And, I was able to contact their department, and they allowed me to come to their closed practice and watch, as they're doing their scouting report and how they're going to guard different players and different actions. And, I'm taking all these notes and learning all this stuff. And, I'm able to talk with Muffet McGraw after the practice was over and, ask her some questions and stuff. And literally she's a day before the national semifinals. She's playing in the Final Four. And she starts asking me, so what do you guys run? And tell me about your program. What do you guys do? What have you had success with? And so I just feel like that's something I've learned from some of these coaches that I really admire, that have had incredible success, that they are always trying to learn from others. And so I try to do that as well. And I'm always trying to learn. But again, advice is meet as many coaches as you can, volunteer as much as you can, be willing to go for any opportunity. I mean, my first, coaching experience that I left California for, I went to Alcorn State in the middle of nowhere in Mississippi. And that was actually, I was recommended by Coach Livesey. And it was through one of his connections. He helped me get the position to be an assistant coach there. And so that, I drove across the country and took the opportunity to coach in the middle of nowhere in Mississippi. And, I think those things just build on each other. And that helped me then when I decided after that, I was a men's coach then. And I kind of decided I'd been a boys high school varsity coach, girls varsity coach. I'd coached women at Point Loma Nazarene. Now I coach men at Alcorn State University. And, after that season, I kind of decided, I really enjoy all my experiences, but I want to stay on the women's side. And, so then that helped me when I was looking for another opportunity, and I got the position at Loyola University in New Orleans. So long story short, go to practices, be ready to volunteer, meet people, be willing to share, learn from others. And it's hard to break in, but it's possible. I know if someone's determined, they can do it.
I want to appreciate you, Coach, for your time. Gotten to know you fairly well over the last few months. One of the good guys. And good luck to you and your Hope International program. And we'll see you on future Zoom clinics. I know you're going to be doing a clinic for us here shortly. So look forward to that. And good luck to you. Stay safe. Keep the family safe. And again, good luck to you guys next season. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed this, and I wish you and your family stay safe and the best of luck to Patriot. And hopefully, even if the season's in March, I hope you guys have a great one. And I know you guys have been, fighting for that top spot in your league for some years. So I hope this can be your year. And, with all these Zooms and everything you're doing, I'm sure you've been learning a lot. And I just want to thank you for allowing myself and all these other coaches opportunity to connect with others and to learn from others. And I just wish you and your team all the best. I think you guys are going to continued success, and hopefully we're all learning some great things that we can take back to our team to make them better.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
All righty. Have a good one.
You too. Thanks again.